And with the next pick, we are on the clock. Hey, everybody. This is the Next Pick podcast. We are a subsect of the SP Streamer podcast and part of the Fantrax and Fantrax HQ family of podcasts. I am one half of your hosting duo, Mr. Drew Wheeler. And with me, as always, is my fabulous co host, Mr. Peyton Skinner. Peyton, how in the world are you, pal? It's been such a long time.
Yeah, that is definitely an understatement. It feels like it's been longer than it has, honestly, but I'm doing all right. I've been real busy. I know we both have been trying to really look forward. We were just talking about this upcoming kind of holiday weekend, hopefully be able to just relax, take a step back. But overall, really excited to jump in here and get back on the saddle, you know?
I do. I'm excited as well. And you said a mouthful there, buddy, because never have I needed a holiday weekend more than the one I need right now. Um, yeah, you know the details to it, Peyton, to the business at work and how it has been just. I believe my exact words earlier today was, "It's been a nightmare day," and so from a nightmare day to a dream scenario we go because we're going to podcast tonight and we're revisiting our prospect rankings from earlier in uh, in the preseason. So, buddy, I don't know if you have any kind of general thoughts for what's changed, what's different in your rankings as compared to where they were earlier in the preseason. But if you do have any thoughts or general ideas or guidelines to your list changes, could you hit me with those?
Yeah, I mean, kind of overall, if I look at my list, I think the biggest trend, and this kind of happens every year when I do my list kind of updates, is preseason. I'm pretty hesitant to rank a lot of young rookies super highly that are, the only sample size we really got to see was rookie ball. And so, this is the time of year where we're starting to see some of those guys playing full season ball, and you're starting to get, true data samples of what they look like and what they can do. So I would say a lot of those guys really popped up my list specifically this time around. Unsurprisingly so, but definitely a couple of them have been just blazing hot. So they even jumped a little bit higher than I was anticipating. That you kind of have in your head, and even last time we recorded and talked prospects, like, you know, I know I've been really high on Khalil Watson for a while. Like, just dude's tooled up, really excited about him. Um, and so seeing some of that play out with him is super exciting. Whereas, there's other guys that have jumped in and maybe even snuck ahead of him. Spoiler alert on the rookie list here. So, but yeah, I mean, I'd say overall, biggest thing that stood out to me was just young guys, and then also think I'm just realizing how much I really care about pitching once they're kind of in the upper levels of the minors. As I look through my list, I think that was kind of a trend that I identified. What about yourself?
With myself, and I don't know what this says about me, but more than the positive, I noticed the negative. I noticed the regressions. So I don't know what that says about me and the place that I'm in mentally right now. I noticed though that a lot of the players that had significant gain in my list were players who I were either omitted from my prior listing or ones who I had lower on the list and now have realized I have a better opinion of than I thought. I did have to lower a couple of my favorite guys too. I had to
Mm,
finally face facts and say, this guy is probably not quite number 9. He's number 11. This guy is not quite number 20. He's probably closer to 30. This guy's, and this is obviously something that you do over time and you monitor and adjust. It's like you said. And I did think it's interesting, though, that you have cemented your pitching beliefs. I know in one of our first couple of conversations about prospects, your big thing with pitching was I want to see them at the upper levels. That's when I really start to believe. And
hmm
so I'm excited to hear what you have to say in that front, man. So I did notice something. Peyton, as you all know, the resident math whiz of the Next Pick podcast, he has done he has run our individual rankings through the aggregator machine. He has aggregated them and compiled into our consensus list. One player who I omitted from our consensus list in the previous session, our first episode, and now that I've also done here, is Mckenzie Gore. And I should say, this is not intentional disrespect to Mckenzie Gore. I don't know if it's just my brain has tricked myself into thinking he's older than he is or he has more innings pitched than he does. Alas, he has not eclipsed rookie eligibility. And so his ranking will be a little skewed than what it should be. Looking at my rankings right now, I can tell you I would probably have Gore comfortably in my top 15. Looking at the top 10, I could say anywhere between 9 and 15. 15 would be probably the safe bet there, just because, without really analyzing the nitty gritty of each of these guys. But I did notice, and Peyton pointed out after performing the aggregation sorcery that he does, that Gore was missing from my list yet again. And so I had to apologize before we get started to you all. The Mckenzie Gore stands of the world, I apologize. Anyhow, Peyton, I know that we said that we were going to do this a little bit more loosey-goosey than we did last time, so I'm going to pull up this list if you want to do the same, our combined aggregated list, and let's talk about some things that we've noticed.
Let's do it.
All right, let's see. Right offhand, I'm seeing that we have a similar issue. Well, I say issue, similar thought as we did last time. We have two players that are tied for first place, but in the listing you've made here, I agree with the player that you put at number one on our aggregate list, that being Corbin Carol. Very interesting.
That's right.
Tied with none other than
Grayson Rodriguez.
Mr. G-Rod himself. So, very interesting. I like this a lot. I think that it's I'm not going to say that it's an unpopular pick around the industry. I've seen several writers and several analysts have let Carroll assume the throne, even though guys that one might assume in the preseason he's leapfrogged those guys like right offhand Riley Green, Adley Rutschman, even Grayson Rodriguez. I think that any of those guys probably one would have assumed, once the likes of Witt, Torkelson, and of course Julio Rodriguez graduate from their prospectum, these guys will be the ones. But no, it's been Mr. Corbin Carroll. And Peyton, would you like to share what has sparkled with you about Corbin Carroll in the early going of the season?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny, and I kind of want to give you and I some love, brother. I feel like we were pretty good in our preseason ranking. When I was looking at kind of where other analysts and other writers in the industry had Corbin Carroll, I feel like you and I both were probably two of the higher guys on him coming into the year. And, it looks like that was a pretty good call on our part. So shout out to us for that. But yeah, I mean, I think kind of what we talked about in our, preseason rankings with Carroll is the biggest thing for me was, is he going to show any kind of fatigue from the injury, or is he just going to jump right back in where he left off pre-injury? And he's easily and some honestly jumped back in right where he was. The power's there, and we knew the hit was going to be there. We knew the speed was going to be there, but we started to see a little bit of power right before he got injured. And it shows that, so far we've seen that stick around. So I think this guy's just built to be a 5-category stud, and he's going to just dominate fantasy for a pretty long time, honestly. So I personally didn't think it was too hard to put him at number one.
Absolutely. It was, I'm trying to think of whether it was harder to put G-Rod at 2 against Julio or whether it's harder to say that Carol is not one against G-Rod. That's tough. I still think, all things considered, I would rank them in that order: Julio, Grayson Rodriguez, Corbin Carol. But the hair of difference between Carol and Grayson Rodriguez is very thin. It is frog hair-esque, if I could shout out to our fellow Southerners. So I did like that, and you said a mouthful again, buddy. I really like that you said this guy looks like he's almost shifted into a further gear. He's taken another step. Not only did he not show fatigue, he's jumped right back in and taken another jump forward. He looks like a 5-category stud. This is a player who I am recommending people acquire at all costs, logically. If possible, if for whatever reason he's not owned in your league, or if the manager who currently has him on their team is flexible, see what you can do. See what you can make happen, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, that window is probably already closed if you have if you're in a competitive league, but preseason, I think I was jumping all over this guy because there was some people that were a little bit hesitant with the injury. So, but yeah, I mean, you said it well. If you can jump in, definitely do so.
Most certainly. Most certainly. So let's look again at some players who in preseason, and I'm going to call myself out. In the preseason, there were several players who I was not as in on as you were. And now looking at your half of the aggregate list, it seems as if I'm getting in, but I'm still at the shallow end of the pool. You are head first diving for treasure at the deep end. I'm just trying to get adjusted to the temperature of the water. And the guys I'm talking about are our number 12 and 13 prospects on our aggregate list: Marco Luciano and Jordan Walker. Mr. Skinner, you have Jordan Walker as your number 5 prospect, and Luciano at number 7. I have Luciano at 22, Walker at 29. And admittedly speaking, I think I may still be a little low on Walker particularly, but
yeah.
But Peyton, looking at these guys on our aggregate list ahead of such luminaries as Green and Gore and Francisco Alvarez, Nolan Gorman, and in the same realm as Josh Young, George Kirby, other guys I'm sure we'll get to. What a rise. What a rise in our aggregate ranking for these two guys specifically.
Definitely. Yeah, it's kind of funny. So I actually, if you look at our rankings preseason, I was actually higher on Marco than I am now. But I think there's just, like I was talking about, there's just been some other guys that have kind of shot up the rankings per se. And, I think also you've come a little bit higher on him to make our aggregate meet somewhere in the middle there. But yeah, I absolutely love this guy. I mean, I've talked a lot about Luciano in the past with a bunch of people that have reached out to me. I've kind of been leading the parade of Luciano stands for a while. Just, I think last year when he was struggling, I was like, man, this guy's just way too young for me to write him off. And the raw power, the just ability you see to impact a baseball is unlike most other prospects. And that's just, I can't really get away from that when it comes to Luciano. I mean, coming into last season, this guy was, he was the guy I thought was going to be my number 1 when J-Rod, Witt, and Torque graduated. Like, I was right there, like, okay, this is the next guy. And, so it's actually kind of funny because I am still one of the higher people on him, but I've actually come down a little bit just because other guys have just impressed me a lot, But going to Walker, that was probably the number 1 thing, aside from Mckenzie Gore. Obviously, that was more just you forgetting than intentionally leaving him off. But the Jordan Walker disparity between the two of us, that was probably the number 1 thing that I was like, man, this is I was really shocked to see how high I was, and then seeing him at 29 on your list, I was like, man, we definitely need to talk about him because similar to Luciano, this guy just looks different in the box. And I
Yeah.
saw it last year when I was first getting him and first getting good looks at him, and kind of wanted to wait and see what would happen coming into this year. And I mean, the guy's 20 years old in double A and he's just raking. So that's what just makes me so excited about him, enough to push him all the way up there. I mean, right now he's stealing bases. I don't know. I think long term he's definitely going to grow out of that. So he's probably not going to be giving you too many steals down the road. But you never know. I mean, look at like Jose Ramirez, who plays third. If you look at his body type, he doesn't look like a guy that's going to be stealing you bags, but he does, you know? So you never know. I think more than anything, though, it's the bat, the power, the raw power is just unbelievable. Like, I haven't seen raw power like what Jordan Walker has in a while from a prospect.
Yeah. See, again, this is a guy who I definitely need to I acknowledge I need him to be higher, but I still want to see a little more. I still want to see a little more. And again, though, this
Yeah.
is a guy that, if given the opportunity, I couldn't hesitate to get him. I can't say that I would stop myself from moving, significant pieces to get him, just because you said it, he looks different in the box, and that's just something that I've acknowledged, and yet still that little pessimist in my brain won't let me bump him up higher. And I'll say this for the second straight podcast discussing him. In my next evaluation, he will be higher. That's all I can say with
That's what I
certainty.
like to hear.
That's all I can say with certainty, but I can say it with certainty. So I'll point out a little discrepancy that we have here. I did notice two specifically, and one of them I know is going to be picking on myself a little more. So let's go ahead and do that one. The number 7 prospect on my list, unsurprisingly, is Hunter Green, who, if you haven't, since we last did our rankings, I have written an article about Hunter Green that you could find on spstreamer.com. I have him at number 7 of my top. I think I don't remember how many I submitted to you, but 7. And Peyton, my friend, you have Hunter Green at number 30. So again, quite a discrepancy there between those guys. It's not quite. It's close to the discrepancy between Walker.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah, very similar discrepancy. You're on the short end of this one, and I'm curious if maybe do you have by chance where you had Green preseason?
I do. I had him 26th. And you
So
had him at
down
9th.
slightly. Okay.
So you moved him up a little bit, and I moved him down a little bit.
Okay. So just slight fluctuation up or down on both of our lists. When I look at Hunter Green, I think that something I said in my article is coming to roost. And it's been something that I'm hardly the first person to have said. Much smarter people than I have said it. His fastball is extremely flat in the zone. It's a very easy to track, and so it's easy to take advantage of. Now, that being said, in a start like he had today, you see the worst case scenario for him. And I mean that. I think that's a worst case scenario. 3 home runs because the slider was not on. It just didn't look good. Slider wasn't there today. So if the fastball is playing predictably, the slider is off, and the changeup is just, I mean, what, a get me over pitch? I mean, you tell me.
Yeah.
Would you call it that? Am I being too generous?
I mean, that's a fair way to describe it. It's definitely not a quality offering at this point, I would say. So
I think that I'm definitely not out. Still in, because the strikeout potential is still elite. I'll call it elite. It's elite strikeout potential.
Yeah, that's fair.
But he has to make adjustments that I'm a little concerned it gets over. I do still mean what I said, that if the worst case scenario for Hunter Green is a ninth inning bully, a aggressive, mean pitcher that's throwing 100 every pitch, I don't know. End of a ball game, I don't know who's touching it. I mean, you're elite hitters, but I mean, not every team has that. And even still, an elite pitch can beat an elite hitter, 50% of the time. Anyway, I still have hope. I will say that based on the trajectory and on the guys who graduated, Green should have been higher on my list. And I also should say that I flopped or flipped, I guess, depending on which of you in this equation. Shane Boz and Hunter Green have flipped and or flopped, depending on your side of that equation. So Boz is now my second ranked starting pitching prospect, behind, of course, Grayson Rodriguez.
Yes, I did notice that.
I just, looking at it now, I think that the fastball, the diminished velocity, and I don't really like any of Boz's second. I think that Green's slider is as good as Boz's fastball, but even still, the consistency, the shape, the way it plays in the zone, I think it's going to be a more viable weapon, even despite the lack of 100-mile-per-hour velo. So there you have it. Another one I noticed, though, and I'm going to let you kind of take the ball on this one because you have him 9 spaces lower than me, is Mr. C.J. Abrams. I've got him all the way up at number 3, and you've got him, again, #math, at 12. So if you would, sir, C.J. Abrams, what's up with that?
Yeah, real quick to touch on Green,
Sure.
I would say I think this guy was probably the hardest guy on my entire list to rank. I think I had the hardest time. And I did a top 30 for the podcast, just kind of prepping. I know, like we mentioned, we've both been pretty crazy, so we kind of just went down to that point. And Green was that guy where it was like, he's shown ability to get major league hitters out. So I can't just leave him off of my list. But there are pretty much all of the question marks you brought to light, I kind of saw similarly. So that's where I'm like, okay, I'm so torn because the ceiling is just about as high as any of the other arms in the minor leagues or even the major leagues, honestly. But it's just, that fastball is really just hittable is the way I would describe it right now. So, and without that elite velocity, it really makes me where I'm uncertain to know where he's going to go. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think he's one of those guys you just have to hold. There's no way you're going to take any action one way or the other. I think if, you're completely out or, completely in, then that's fine. But if you're anything other than those two extremes, you're kind of just waiting and seeing what happens. I think, like I said, the ceiling's there and it justifies me keeping him on my list. Did you have something to add really quick to that?
Yeah, I just think that that's kind of a sticky limbo to be in. If we're trying to look at it from the perspective of, more than just you and I having a discussion about Hunter Green, which is perfectly entertaining content, in my opinion. I mean, you guys tell me. But I think that being completely in would mean you have Green or you're trying to acquire Green. Completely out, you're trying to move him or you're staying away. But if you're waiting to see, I don't think that you're going to take the risk of adding him when he's, giving up 3 home runs in 5 innings, or when he's getting toasted, or when his fastball is, as you put it really, really well, it's just hittable. I wouldn't say it's as closed. It's definitely more of an open window than Corbin Carol, but I think the window is bizarre. It's odd.
It is.
Maybe on a second floor, it may be unlocked, but it's on a second story. So how do you get to it?
Yeah.
You're either already there, or you're like, it's not worth to climb up this lattice. This is a bizarre analogy, but I'm hoping you guys follow. So anyway, you were saying though regarding C.J. Abrams was the next thing we were
Yes.
coming around to.
Yeah, so Abrams is another one that's tough. Honestly, again, kind of going back to our list from March, he was another that we kind of had similar discrepancy at the time. You had him at fifth, and I had him at 11th. And now you have him at third, and I have him at 12th. So you've moved him up a little bit. I've moved him down a little bit. So very similar to what we saw with Green. Just I think we're both a little, or I'm a little bit high, a lot higher on Abrams than I was with Green, respectively. So it's not necessarily that I'm any more out on Abrams than I was, if that makes sense. It's more that there's just other guys that I still prefer to him, I would say. And kind of similar to how I felt preseason, I just don't see the power. I know people have talked about the power and the potential for power. And, it's the wheels are there and the hit tools there. Obviously, right now, he hasn't been hitting for average this year, but I still believe that he's a very, very good hitter. So I'm not worried about that at all. It's more just truly that power and how much is he going to be able to give you in the RBIs and the home runs and those categories of that nature. He's still a very, very highly ranked player in Roto because of the steals alone. A guy that's stealing that many bags is going to give you elite value. That's why I have him where I do. If he didn't have that much speed, I'd have him significantly lower, to be honest with you,
Sure.
So yeah, it's just kind of waiting to see what happens there. And, obviously you got a very small major league sample size. I'm not taking anything away from that. I was kind of questioning the move. I know Tatis was injured, so that had to kind of prompt them to do something. But I don't think he was quite ready to just jump all the way from Double-A there, especially for a player that you're hoping grows into more power and continues to develop as, a 20, 21-year-old guy. So that's kind of where, again, it's honestly, I haven't really changed much on Abrams. I kind of view him similarly. Maybe, honestly, it's kind of funny just looking at our list. It might just be more of a trend that I noticed when I was looking at our list. I noticed, and we'll probably dive into this a little bit more with specific guys, but I noticed one, you were higher on pitchers. Just generally, you're more willing to rank pitchers than I am. And you're also, I think, a little bit higher on speed guys than I am, where a guy, and kind of the other side of that coin is I'm a little bit higher on power. A Luciano and a Walker, two guys we just talked about me being extremely high on. They don't necessarily give much value in the speed department. So it kind of makes sense when we're thinking about it in that way, like, oh, well, these are kind of the guys I lean towards, and these are kind of the guys that you're leaning towards. So I can see that discrepancy. It's kind of funny because in March, it was our first time doing it. So I wasn't totally sure. But now when we rehashed again and I saw similar trends, I was like, oh, okay. So this is kind of what I'm seeing here, which is just kind of funny,
Very. Absolutely it is. I think that it is just kind of something. It's a quirk and a trend that I think you're just to pick up on. The pitching one I definitely knew, and I could definitely see maybe elements. Hearing you say it, I could hear and see elements in my brain of Peyton does prefer the power guys. The speed kind of comes out of left field a bit when I consider it, but really when I think of the methodology and of what
Mm.
I like seeing guys that can contribute across the board, even if it's a little uneven, maybe higher in speed, but even still, you said something a moment ago about Abrams that has me reflecting. And I think as bizarre as it is, I think what I took away from his major league cup of coffee, if I could call it that, is just that he was willing.
Mm.
He probably wasn't ready, if we're being totally honest. I mean, who are we to say? But if
Yeah.
I'm making an assessment, I don't think he was ready, but he was willing and stepped in and did his best. I
Yeah.
still believe that there is a hitter there who will hit with power, whose speed will be a game-changing tool. And in the lineup that he's currently projected to be a part of course, anything can change, but I don't see it changing. I think that he, regardless if he's at the top, which I would consider he should be, or the bottom of the order, 8 or 9 versus 1,
Hmm.
I think he's going to score runs. I think he'll have RBI opportunities. I think he'll be valuable.
Hmm.
The power is going to be the
The
telling
hinge
thing
point.
with the hinge point. I love it. The
Yeah.
power is going to be the hinge point with CJ Abrams, and hearing my faith in what I haven't seen. And I know this I
Mm.
probably brought up last time as well, and we'll see if it changes in round 3 of this exercise. But faith in something I haven't seen in Abrams in a positive light, maybe I should have more faith in what I haven't seen in a negative way in terms of a little bit more consistency in the box with a Walker or a Luciano. Maybe I should consider they will evolve. They will show
Mm.
that hit because they have. If they have now, then what's to say they won't against more advanced pitching? It's a learning curve, guys. That's something that I will never stop telling you. You're always learn and evolve because if you're not, then you're going to be like a dinosaur, man. And Triceratops has 3 horns, but he's also dead. So how cool is he? I don't know. Anyhow, I'm going to look back at our list here at our aggregates. I have a question, but I'm going to try to save it a second.
Okay.
We've actually also, Peyton, I don't know if you saw, but we have a comment from YouTube from our buddy Trey. And I know that it's regarding a player that you're very big on. I have been following your Twitter, and I know you're a big fan of this guy. So we're going to get to him in just a moment. A player who I noticed that you have ranked as highly as I want to have them ranked is Gunnar Henderson.
Mm.
Everything about Gunnar Henderson ticks every box for me. Every single box it ticks. And I don't know if it's just more excitement in the moment for another player, more excitement in other ways. Maybe I see Henderson as being solid floor across the board, whereas other guys I think pop off in more explosive and more dynamic ways. Henderson is fabulous, and he's got to go up in my rankings. I need you to hold me to it. I need to be my accountability buddy in this way and hold me to it because this is a guy who I quite literally have put my money where my mouth is on. I don't know if you saw it, but in the Highlander Dynasty Invitational, recently traded Starling Marte for Gunnar Henderson and Kobe Mayo.
I did see that.
I was quite pleased with this move.
Yeah, I think that's a really good move. I think, obviously, it's a very different in terms of contention window. So you kind of, if you're a team that's wanting to win now, obviously Marte's the clear win of that trade. But if you're, just going for talent and restocking, then yeah, I mean, you walked away with pretty good haul there with the 2 Orioles guys that are both, young sluggers, both have pretty good power. And, in Henderson's case, just really odd splits. When I was digging into him, that's kind of what made me push him up as high as I did, because last year, if you look at his numbers, he was striking out a pretty high rate, like an alarmingly high rate. And this year, I mean, he's walking like 20% of the time. I think he's walking more than he's striking out. And I was just blown away by that because you just do not see that very much, even more so in a 20-year-old at AA, So that was just really eye-popping to me. And, you see the home run steal combo there, which you always love in fantasy. So, I mean, you said it well. He kind of checks all the boxes. It's just a matter of holding that stability and showing that he can do it for a longer period of time because this is the first year that we're seeing all of it. You see glimpses the past few years. You've seen like this tool pop up or this tool pop up at different times over the past few seasons, but he's really starting to put it all together. So it's pretty exciting. He's an exciting player for sure. And I think going back to what we were talking about with Corbin Carol and some others, I think the window, to your point, is pretty open on this guy right now, where a lot of people aren't fully in on this guy quite yet. So now is absolutely the time to go get this guy, just like you did. So props to you for jumping in, because I
Thank
think
you.
that was a great job by you.
Thanks, buddy. Oh, that's very sweet of you. I'll say this. I think that there are a contingency of dynasty managers who are maybe even ahead of us in this regard. They're saying, okay, Hendo is a guy that I am strictly he's in the treasure chest. He's not available for discussion. This is a guy that's strictly off limits. And I can't blame people for thinking that way. I think that Henderson, we've beaten a dead horse here with it, and I'll beat it one last time. It's the boxes are all ticked. He's a guy that looks consistent across the board. The defense is really good. I think even if he shifts to third base, he's going to play and play consistently for years. If these statistical, box score filling gains are to all continue simultaneously, I would say this is a top 10 prospect by this time next year.
Hmm.
It would not surprise me in the slightest. Just predicting the guys that I would assume are going to graduate, predicting out the rest of his season, I could see it happening. I think that this is a player who, here's a question for you. Right now, if you had to have one, Anthony Volpe, Gunnar Henderson.
Oh, man. I think I still stick with Volpe, but I could easily be regretting that, very soon.
I think I want Hendo.
Oh, man, that's tough.
It is tough, and I hate myself for saying it because even admittedly, right now, Volpe's higher on my list, and I think I'm being patient with the guy. He's obviously not doing what he did last year. I mean, last year was a near 30 home run, over 30 steal season with killer average, runners coming in, he's scoring runs, and it's over 2 levels. This year, obviously, he's not quite met that expectation, but I did see that his BABIP was like career lows right now.
Yes.
So if you have him, hold tight. I think you're good.
Absolutely.
You'll notice that, well, you won't notice at home. You don't have the list. But I noticed that he went down a spot in my ranks, but it was more happenstantial than it was bad. Anthony, you're going down. So what have you? Anyhow, hey, we had you were saying, I'm so sorry.
No, I was going to say, I completely agree with you. I think he was one of those, he actually went up one spot in mine, but it was only because my top 3 all graduated in Torque, J-Rod, and Bobby Witt. So, someone has to move up the chain when those 3 are all gone.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, he's kind of right in there. I think you said it well. The BABIP is just unbelievably low. You got to hold.
Yeah. So we teased it just a moment ago, and I know that this player is not in our top prospects list aggregate. I did have him as an honorable mention on mine, if I'm not mistaken. I assume he is the same on yours, but I'm going to pull this question up and I'm going to let you read it, and you handle this one, Peyton, because I know you're a big fan of this guy.
Yeah, definitely. So our buddy Trey here asked if he's pretty much just asking our thoughts on Milwaukee Brewers outfielder Joey Weimer. I'm not actually sure how you pronounce it.
I'm going to go with Weimer.
I think it is Weimer. But yeah, we are very high on this guy. I think I actually tweeted about him, as you alluded to, Drew, a couple weeks back. I was really interested to see how he performed coming into this year. The mechanics, kind of a lot of things going on with his swing were very interesting to me and kind of had me hesitant to move him way up my list coming into the season. But honestly, just the way that he's come out and hit the ball and hit the ball with force is really what's had me kind of buy in, per se, and really pushed him up my list. The mechanics and just overall, all of the what's happening pre-pitch is still kind of interesting. And I'm not sure, as he continues to get to the elite of the elite when it comes to pitchers, Not sure how that will pan out, but we've seen guys make it work, that don't have just, perfect mechanics in the box. And so far, it looks like he's going to be one of those guys that can do it. And, I was talking about guys that are tooled up. This guy is right up there with the best of them. I mean, you see everything that you want to see and some with him. So it's a really interesting player. I think you could make a huge argument for him being up on our list. For me, it's truly just coming down to those mechanics and trying to really figure out how consistent he can be with that. Now, he's done it for a pretty good sample size now, so it's becoming harder and harder to really care,
Certainly. I think you're right. I'm just hesitant to really pop him up there. And obviously, there's a guy like Gunnar Henderson that I'm debating on liking more than my number 12 guy. And I have Henderson at 30 or something. So my prospect ranking individually is more just touch and go, as you'd imagine. Either way, a guy like Joey Weimer, who has shown significant talent, I'd say significant talent for probably the last year and the last year and what we've seen of this year. Significant talent, I would say. So I think that he's definitely kind of in that range of guys that could be in our aggregate list towards the end of the year, if not sooner. I think that he's, depending on the depth of your league, certainly a target to acquire. If I'm not mistaken, Trey plays in a very deep league. He's asked several questions in the Discord regarding some deep prospect guys. So I'm assuming he has Joey Weimer. I would hold on to him, and I would obviously stash him. Keep an eye on him. Like Peyton said, the mechanical things, just make sure that things look consistent, because if he's making it work, who are we to argue? Who are we to argue with it? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's a little bit old for his level, or he was last year. So I think that was another element that had me a little bit lower coming into the season. But again, it's just one of those things you got to, like you said, if you have this guy, there's absolutely no reason to just get rid of him or sell him unless you're getting, a ton on the dollar for him. So
there'll be Brewers fans out there or guys who buy into Weimer's power, and they'll say things in the realm of, okay, I'm willing to overpay. Or maybe it's a team that's rebuilding, that's, you hit a rebuilding team who's also a Weimer fan, who also needs power in the future. And then you can really clean up by selling this prospect who, would you agree, Peyton, that a fair word is maybe inconsistent or has potential for inconsistency?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that, it wouldn't be surprising at all to see him go through periods of struggle at different points,
Here's a comp. Jock Peterson?
Yeah, maybe. I think, honestly, he might have a little bit more speed than Jock, but I could see it for sure, in terms of just overall what he brings to the table when he's coming into the box, tools. And, even it's kind of, I know this is a really hot topic, but even kind of like a Cody Bellinger type where, just you see him get just white hot, just, one of the best players in the game.
That's a spicy comp, Peyton.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know that's a hot topic, so don't come at me. I personally am one of the higher guys on Bellinger. I will say that. So if anyone's like thinking I'm trashing on Joey here, I'm definitely not. Because I think that, like I said, Bellinger is plenty capable of getting hot and just being a game changer. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, it's so hard to do comps because you don't really know what these guys are going to look like when they're fully matured and up to the majors and facing that type of talent. So,
sure. But even still, I mean, if you want to, Trey, if you want to consider long-term outcomes somewhere between Jock Peterson and Cody Bellinger, that's what we're saying. That's what we're saying for the here and now. Thank you for the question. And if
Oh,
anybody else
man.
has any more, shoot them in. We'll try to get to them before the end of the episode. One more thing I wanted to ask you as we're kind of winding down is, can we talk about who the biggest risers and the biggest fallers on your list were, please?
Hmm.
If you can access that, I have mine already, and I'll throw some names out there. And if you want to kind of riff on those, but just for the curiosity of those at home, those listening, those watching, the players who fell the furthest in my rankings were as follows. I had Mick Abel fall 9 spots. I previously in March had him at number 18. I now have him at 27. Oswald Peraza fell 9 spots, had him previously at 19. He now fell to 28. So Abel and Peraza both took 9 spot falls. From my 29 spot, that's just a tough spot, man. That 26 through 29 spots on my March list just all got hammered. The 29 spot, I had Luis Matos. He fell to an honorable mention level, so not even in my top 40.
Hmm.
And Vidal Brujan fell 15 spots. He was number 26, now honorable mention, if that. And real quick, I'll talk about Brujan. The hit tool is there. I still like the speed. I don't know where Tampa Bay values him or where they see him long term. I think they've been doing a lot of the yo-yo gimmick with Mr. Brujan, and it scares me for his long term potential now. Hence
Hmm.
the honorable mention. I think the talent is still there, but with a team as I think once I called it the loggiest log jam of all the log jams is Tampa Bay and their offensive. Like, I mean, they where are they going to play somebody? I mean, it's gotta be an injury or two for Brujan to see playing time. So that's definitely rough. Peyton, did you have time to pull up your most the guys that fell the most?
Yeah, I kind of put together a color coding with
Me
mine
too.
rather than I don't have the exact values necessarily
Okay.
like you did, but my biggest guy in terms of followers, and again credit to you because you were kind of ahead of the game on this guy, but it was Brennan Davis with the Cubs, and he's honestly similar to what we talked about before, and this is a guy I thought I was low on coming into the season, where I was like, okay, I guess I should say I thought I was rightfully low on. And I've kind of felt pressured to put him as high as I did just because of the tools. Again, going back to tools. Um, and where I had him, a lot of people easily had this guy in their top 10. I had this guy um, at number 18. So kind of, still pretty high. But he completely fell out of my top 30 now. And, he's just been struggling, to be honest with you. And kind of going to one of your favorite things, hit tool, man. It's just been eye popping looking at this guy and really seeing that hit tool has kind of been wavering, a good bit, and trying to figure out who he's going to be and not limiting the strikeouts. A lot of that stuff caused him to probably be my biggest faller. Luis Matos was another one of mine. You touched on him. He's been struggling. He hasn't fallen quite as far. I think that he's a very young player, so there's a lot of time there where I'm, not just bailing on him necessarily.
Sure.
I'm not bailing on Davis, I should say that, but I have lowered him respectively to where I had him. Um, and, those are kind of my biggest two. I would say Nick Gonzalez, I have lowered some, but not to the level that those two guys. I was probably a little bit higher coming into the season than a lot of people were. And the strikeouts have just been a little bit concerning to me. I wasn't expecting that. Watching him in college, he was one of the best hitters every year that he was in college, and
Hmm.
I kind of expected the same as a professional, and he's been fine. But he's not going again to tools. He's not a guy that's necessarily tooled up. He's more of a kind of a little bit of everything, a quality hitter. He's not going to play a premium position. He's kind of a clear second base type guy. He's not going to play short. So he's just been docked a little bit for me just because of his early season struggles. And then a lot of the guys that are big risers we've touched on. We talked about Walker. Mckenzie Gore obviously has blasted up my list again. Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Lawler actually has surpassed Khalil Watson as my number one guy from last year's class that I'm, just loving everything about Lawler. I think that they're doing a lot of really great things with their players over in Arizona, clearly, with Carol, Lawler, and even Alec Thomas. I was relatively high on him already, but I think we both have boosted him up a little bit. So that's been a guy that I've been really impressed with. But yeah, those are kind of my main risers per se, that I've been really excited about. And then looking a little bit deeper down the list, there's Royce Lewis and our boy Vinny P. I think he could be getting the call pretty soon here. I don't know. I'm not really sure what's going on there. There's some people all day just blasting on Twitter like, hey, this guy needs to be up. So I don't know, but I've been really impressed with him, obviously, as well.
Peyton, I would say this is a podcast that loves its breakfast, wouldn't you say? We literally had an episode titled The Pancake Parade. Man, what about the Italian breakfast? Vinny Pascantino. This is a dude. This is a dude. Vinny P, the Italian breakfast. He is my biggest riser. 23 spots. He went from an honorable mention to number 18 on my list. Just under him, Jordan Lawler, you mentioned. 22 spots. He's number 19 now, just under Vinny P. You might have seen the teaser for the episode. Guy's named Jordan. Jordan Walker went up 11 spots in my rankings. Nolan Gorman went up 16 spots in my rankings. And Nick Lodolo went up 20 spots in my rankings. Nick Lodolo now 21, nearly cracked the top 20. So even still looking at this, I see guys that I want to boost more. I know Gunnar Henderson needs a boost. I want to see me have Jordan Walker higher up my list. I was really tempted to move Royce Lewis even higher. I know you talked about Royce Lewis. I lifted Jack Leiter up 7 spots on my list. And, earlier today I noticed that MLB TV had the Jack Leiter start tonight free. So I was going to say, if it was any other day where, you and I weren't having to push till late, we could have just live streamed some Jack Leiter.
Hey, that would have been a good time.
watched Jack Leiter as he did. I have not looked into that start, but Leiter has gone up in my list as well. So, yeah, we've talked about some good things. We've talked about guys that have gone up, talked about the guys that have fallen, and it has been a fun show. So, Peyton, I know that last time we also mentioned wanting to get our aggregate ranks available to the fine folks at the SP Streamer Elite Discord. So I'm going to put something out there into the universe and we'll see what happens. Before the end of the month, let's try to balance our list one final time and we'll release this boy to the Discord. What do you say?
Let's do it. I think that's a great idea. I think we kind of dropped the ball the first time around, but let's definitely not do it here. And let's get it in there. I think those, they deserve it. I think that it's a great community. I think we have a great time in there giving insight to everybody. And I love being able to provide, kind of an extra something that the general public on Twitter and other outlets aren't getting, so that's a great idea. Before we sign off, I have to mention in our SP Streamer Dynasty, there was a monster trade that went through. And I cannot wait to talk to you about this. I have not told Drew anything about this trade because I wanted his reaction live. So this is a Dynasty Points League. And Mr. Juan Soto was traded, the number one of number ones in dynasty points, was moved. So you can expect a pretty good return. So
What?
let me just tell you what went down. This was earlier this week. We had Mr. Rourke, Baseball Furies, went down and sent Grayson Rodriguez, Brandon Woodruff, Jazz Chisholm, and Kyle Tucker for Juan Soto, Zach Veen, Quinn Priester.
Okay.
What do you think?
Let me break this down. Give me a moment. Who were the two sides of this trade?
Yeah, this was
let's shout these guys out since they're playing in the Discord Dynasty.
Like I said, this was Rourke Dunley. He was the acquirer of Juan Soto. And Big Money Mike Humes, he was the giver of Soto and received a absolute haul back for said player.
My initial takeaway is I'm going to start showing people this trade and seeing what I can get for my Quinn Priester shares. Second, wow. Dude, okay. Looking at it, I think that I'm trying to imagine this in terms of real baseball. I mean, I think you hit it on the head. I think that in a bubble, Soto is probably worth Tucker, Woodruff, and then probably I like it. I think that Big Money Mike got a great haul, and I think that Rourke gave appropriately. Looking at it, anytime you're offering for Juan Soto, you've got to bring it. You have to bring it, or else you're going to get laughed out of the discussion. Rourke brought it. Looking at guys like Jazz and G-Rod and Tucker and Woodruff, like not one of those guys is over 30. Which, good.
No.
Good. First, good. I think that the pieces that he got with Soto, Zach Veen particularly, is I mean, he could be a stud. Yeah. Priester has got a nasty secondary pitch. I believe it's his curveball, but has shown inconsistencies, we'll call it. But man, Big Money Mike gets a stud. I mean, admittedly inconsistent again, but Jazz is a stud. Tucker, who has looked like he could be a top 5 player in baseball, and then at his worst, a top 50, definitely a top 10, top 25 outfielder. Woodruff, who is a top 10 pitcher indisputably.
Oh, absolutely.
And Grayson Rodriguez, who I just finished saying is my number 1 prospect in baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, it's enormous. That was worth the wait. That was worth the wait.
I was shocked when I saw this deal come through. I was shocked. And like you said, if you're moving Soto, you have to be blown away. And this was that type of offer, Yeah. He laid the cards down and he said, I want this guy. This is the number 1 guy and I want him, So yeah. I love it. I think it's a fun trade. This is the type of stuff, that gets people excited, gets people talking. I mean, we're here talking about it. So
clearly,
it's great. So
clearly.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's really some of us in the league were chatting about it, and I think it's really going to come down to what G-Rod becomes. I think that we see what Woodruff, what Tucker are. And, Jazz is having a huge year so far. I think in keeping in mind that this is a points league, so Jazz is a little bit less valuable than what you would expect in a traditional like roto type with the speed. But yeah, I mean, like you said, G-Rod is not just a prospect; he's the pitching prospect right now. So it's a fun one. I love it.
I can't believe that. What a trade! What a trade!
Definitely.
So, if you're curious about where this league came from, about seeing our aggregate rankings in the future, where can we see this? I'll tell you. It is the SP Streamer Elite membership. If you'll go to spstreamer.com/shop, you can see our plans there. Elite monthly, $5.99 a month. That's literally a cup of coffee. One cup of coffee less a month, and you can have this access to this wonderful Discord, which Peyton alluded to, a fabulous community, writers pretty much at your beck and call at any given point, communication, great analysis that you can't get on the site, which also will soon feature our aggregate top prospects list, plus other things. We do many deep dives on there. We have different kinds of team analyses. We have, obviously, people can ask us dynasty questions and I'm so thankful for those guys. Please keep asking us those questions. We love seeing them. It really is a nice kind of mental break for me, honestly. During the day when it's so stressful, I can look at the Discord and see,
So true.
This is the kind of problem I want to think about right now. And I do appreciate it very, very, very much. So, Peyton, tell us real quickly, sir, do you have anything coming up in the pipeline for SP Streamer? Anything you're working on? Anything at all that you would like to share? Or is it more just a wait and see kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, actually, I've been slowly writing an article. I've been trying to put it out there, kind of a buy and sell type in terms of the dynasty scope of things. Really, like we mentioned, both of us have been kind of slammed life wise, but I'm super excited to, get that out. I'm hoping sometime next week, especially with this weekend, to be finally having a break and just be able to chill out some. So super excited for that. Going to dive into some guys this year that are, just a little bit surprising starts to the season. We're kind of a quarter of the way through. So, even some guys that we talked about tonight will be listed on there. And just really excited to bring that to everyone and get back on the saddle in that regard of writing. So what about yourself?
Thank you for asking. To be fair, you kind of hit the nail on the head as well for me. I have been very slow at it with work and with life. It's been a very busy month. But that being said, the end of the month means that it's time for Command and Control, which means that the second edition of Command and Control will be out before the end of the month. Ideally speaking, I'll be researching and writing tomorrow. So that would mean that it would hopefully be up on the site Monday or Tuesday, hopefully. So that will be fun. We'll be trying to help you guys identify prospects that you should be looking for in your dynasty leagues, hopefully beating some of your league mates to the punch on guys that could be next year's Gunnar Hendersons, next year's Anthony Volpe's, next year's insert name here. So we'll get to that. There's been some interesting ones on that list so far, but if you haven't read it, go check out the first edition of Command and Control. Go check out some of Peyton's work, and I'm very much looking forward to the buy and sell article. I think that's going to be really cool, especially from the Dynasty League lens.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it, and I love the kind of just going and starting up a series, man. That's what we love. I think it's great having a continuous thing that people know and can expect and say, hey, this is going to happen and we can be ready for it. I think it's a great idea. I know you shouted out a couple others in the original article that kind of gave you the vision and kind of thought process of putting it together, but props to you guys for putting that together. I'm super excited, and just everyone on the site right now is just killing it. I feel like we've been doing really good in the Discord, pumping out articles, just and
Yes.
all kinds of different articles. Content is really getting diverse this year, which I love
Yeah.
seeing. So it sounds like we've done a really good job. Shout out to Michael for kind of grabbing writers that, like have their own niche within fantasy baseball, because that's such a big, broad umbrella. But, we have guys in Dynasty, guys that are hammering out, relief pitching, catching, streaming, like, the whole 9
Oh,
yards.
yeah.
So it's just super cool. But
Absolutely. It is cool. And, I don't guess we should give it away. Well, let's give it away. If you've listened this far, you deserve a little plug. Hopefully, in our next episode, we will be joined, as a matter of fact, by one of our fellow Dynasty writers for SP Streamer, Mr. Eliezer Vergara. So if you
let's
are
go.
listening, my friend, you better be excited because we're going to have you right here on the pod next time. We'll get with you. We'll have our people call your people. So, Peyton, tell the fine folks at home where they can follow you and keep up with you in between our episodes of The Next Pick.
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Twitter at Prospect Peyton. And again, definitely highly recommend signing up on the SP Streamer Elite Discord chat. I think that, just having guys, even today, I messaged and told someone, hey, just DM me. Like, I have no problem with that. And like Drew mentioned, a lot of times it's a great opportunity for me to just clear my head at work or moving boxes around or whatever's happening outside of work right now. It's just been crazy. So being able to just take a second and look at someone's team and, say like, yeah, that's a great move for you, or just general things. So if you do jump into the Discord, definitely hit me up there because I'm more than happy to be of assistance. Where
Absolutely.
can they find you?
If you were interested in talking to me for whatever reason between our episodes, you can find me primarily on Twitter at DrewIsOK. I have recently been spamming my celebratory Fantasy Survivor season. If you didn't see, Mr. Peyton, Marianne, one of my picks, I predicted in the preseason she would win the entire thing, and she did. So I'm hoping that I will win Fantasy Survivor. We'll have to wait and see for the final points, but way to go, Marianne. I know you're not listening to this podcast, but congrats either way. Also, quick shout out. You were mentioning people were DMing you and you were inviting them to do so. And I wanted to thank some guys that have DM'd me consistently and asked for help. And I'm so appreciative of them. Mike, as well as Matt, thank you both so much for your friendship and for trusting me and my opinions with your team. So that means so much. Peyton and I and the entire Dynasty team, the entire team at SP Streamer, man, we appreciate you guys so much for trusting us and for asking our opinions. It really, truly does mean the world. So anyway, that has been our pick. So with the next pick, you are on the clock, and we can't wait to see what you're going to do. Until next time, we'll see you later. Be nice to each other.